Hey guys, it's Jackson here, and I just got out of the bath, so my hair's all wet and shit. I had an epiphany while I was in the bath. I was thinking about game development, and I was sort of thinking back about my development, not my game development, but my development as a game developer. Over the years, like I've been developing for like almost 5 years now, I think, and I've started to notice that I'm sort of shifting into a new, phase of development or like style of development, and it just occurred to me that this has happened before, and every time it happens, it's a little bit disorienting and a little bit confusing and a little bit fucked up and sort of scary. And I thought it might be useful if I get on here and I talk about some of those transformations that have happened over the last 5 years for upcoming developers, so you sort of know what to expect if you're getting yourself into game development. Or it's not just applicable to game development, because I think these cycles happen through any form of art. I think they're inherent to art and being a creator and mastering a craft, and then what the different stages of that mastery look like. So I think there's three stages that I can identify clearly for me. And in each of those different phases, your priorities are different in what you're trying to do with game development, the reason why you're developing, how you're spending your time when you're developing, the sorts of things that you're engaging in, your goals, what actually brings you joy as well when you're developing. It all changes. Like, the thing that gives you joy in the first year is not the same as the next year, is not the same as the next year, and it's like, as you're going, it's confusing, because it's like you had so much fun developing for so long, and then all of a sudden you fucking hate it. And you're like, but why? What's going on? Like, this used to make me so happy, and now it's just fucking bullshit and depressing. And what I'm here to tell you is that that's normal. It's normal, and it doesn't have to be difficult and challenging if you know what to expect. So that's sort of what I'm going to try and lay out. But the first stage, so when you first get into development, and again, this applies to any sort of art or craft, your priority is to learn, basically. And so what that looks like for game development, because you don't know shit, you don't know how the engine works, you don't know how anything works. So your priority is just to learn as much as you can. And the way to do that in game development is, this is the way that I did it, just for me. You just follow tutorials. So you jump on YouTube, you find a tutorial series that's like fucking 20 hours long or like 10 hours long, where somebody makes a whole project from start to finish, and you just copy. You just copy, bro, and then you do that again, and you do that again, and you do that again. For me, I followed Virtus Education, or I don't know if he's changed his fucking YouTube channel name. I think he might have, but there's plenty of channels which do this shit. I've got a couple of series like that, I think, at least one. But you just go through the series, you find a cool one. So if it's like a wave-based game, or like a survival horror game, or like a first-person shooter if you're into that, or an action adventure, or you find someone who's done a series where they make the best mechanics from like one of your favorite games. Like, I know, what was his name? Matthew Pelage. I don't know if that's how you say his name, but on his channel he remade like runes from Breath of the Wild, grapple mechanics. I don't know, and what was that game? He made that tracer recall mechanic from Overwatch, maybe. But just shit like that. Like, what you do is you literally just find videos, and you just copy. And what starts to happen over time is you start by just literally copying what they're doing so you can understand how the engine works and how the workflow works. And then what happens is, as you start to get familiar, you start to improvise. So you start picking up little tricks that you see people do in one video and then applying that in a spot where somebody in another video has missed it, so that you start to combine all of these things that you've picked up and build upon what you're learning from each video, so all the information comes together and you improve the mechanics so that they're better than the video themselves. And then what that leads you into is the next stage. So you do this for a while, you follow tutorials for a while in whatever you're interested in, whether it's materials or blueprints or AI or fucking landscape building or like whatever. And then eventually you sort of hit a point where it's like, well, it's just a fucking waste of time to watch videos because, you know everything. You know what they're going to say. You know what the video looks like. And as you start to piece this together, what you'll start to notice is you'll start to fast forward videos to like 2x speed, and you'll be able to process what they're saying at like such a rapid rate. It's like ridiculous. Like for me, right? Like if there's something that I don't know how to do, and what I do is I go to YouTube and I type in like a specific question, and I sort of have like a gut feeling as to which video is going to have the piece of information that I'm looking for. And it's like I click the video and I listen to them like sort of speak, and then I pick like a timestamp, like not like one in the description, but I just click on like the little bar at the bottom, just because I have an intuitive feeling of how long it's going to take them to get through all the bullshit, and then like get to the point where it's like they actually give you the information that you need. And you'll develop this as well. It's like so bizarre, and it's like you listen to them like 2x speed, and you're like ignoring most of what they're saying because you've heard it 1,000 times and it's just not relevant until you get to the point where you know that they're about to drop the bomb, and then you can slow down and you can listen. It's like a sixth sense. It's fucking mad. But anyway, where that leads. So like, I mean, you still watch videos throughout your entire development career, but your relationship towards them changes because you're not following them step by step from start to finish. That's stage one. But then as you follow enough of them, you enter stage two, which is where you start to do your own mechanics. So the way that this looks... So the priority of stage one was just to learn as much as you can. And the way that you learn as much as you can is to just be a fucking sponge and just absorb as much as possible from as many different channels in whatever things that you're interested in. And it's important to do what you're interested in rather than what you think you should be doing. Because if you do what you think you should be doing, you're not as motivated to learn as if you do the things that you should be interested in. As the things that you are actually interested in. I hope that made sense. I just blurred my words a fucking lot. I don't even know. But stage two, your priority shifts from being a sponge to actually... I guess it's sort of like being a creator, but it's not creating as much as it's just testing your development skill. So what happens is as you finish absorbing all this information from all these different places, then what you want to do, the natural desire that arises within you is like, all right, I've got all these different pieces of knowledge. I've got this like fundamental understanding of all the core systems of Unreal Engine. How far can I fucking push it, right? And so what happens is you come up with these ideas for games where it's like, you have all these fucking crazy lists of features, and it's like, you know what? I'm going to fucking build an inventory system from scratch. I'm going to build a fucking crafting system. I'm going to build this like systemic interactive AI fucking ecosystem. Like you just, you get fucking mad, right? And so this is the stage where it's like, you spend months and years of your time working on, you know, like a project or two, and just like fleshing out every part of it to like the absolute limit of your capability. Just to see how far you can take it, and just to see like how far you can push your own technical understanding, and also like your organizational skills as well. This is something that becomes really relevant and really important. It's like, as you start to do these mammoth projects, it becomes clear to you, and this is the lesson that's learned in this stage, how important it is to organize your code and make it readable and make it neat so that you can go back and understand it and keep it as simple as you can in such a way that it still performs its function. Because what happens is these projects, they sprawl out into like such a big fucking like spiderweb networked monstrosity. And it's like, you can't possibly hold it all in your mind at the same time. Like in the beginning, when you're following these tutorials, it's like you grasp the concept, and it's like all there and you can hold it all at once. When you start to do these big sprawling projects, it's like, it's this big network of every single thing that you've learned, and they're all linked together. And if those connections aren't neat and like tidy, it just becomes this big fucking mess of spaghetti, like literal like blueprint spaghetti, and you're just like, what the fuck is this? And it just like, it stresses you the fuck out just to look at it, because you're like, well, how do I, like, you want to make a change and you're like, how do I do that? It's like you're trying to juggle all of these things in your mind at once, and it's like, that's the skill that you're developing in this stage, in stage 2. It's like this skill of learning how to, I guess, sort of modularize things and prune down your code, or keep organized, while also pushing your knowledge to the limit. Because in a limit to your knowledge, a limit to what you can do with the game, it's not just how much you know how to program and like how many tutorials you've watched and your technical understanding of the engine. It's also how much information can you hold in your mind at once, and how can you organize yourself and simplify that information in such a way that your brain is free, thinking clearly, and able to add and change things in a way that's manageable without burning yourself out. And this stage, right, like I think this stage fucking takes a couple of years, like if I'm honest. It's like stage 1 where you're learning, like maybe you'll do that for like 6 months, I don't know. But while you're doing that, you'll also be making your own games, sort of spinning off the stuff that you've learned in tutorials. Like you'll take a few mechanics here, take a few mechanics there, and you'll just build on them. But then, yeah, you get into this stage 2 where it's like, all right, I'm going to start a fucking project from scratch. I'm going to build everything myself, and I'm just going to make it as fucking deep and detailed and as complex as possible. And then part of that process as you go through that is learning how to simplify things. So that's stage 2. So your priorities in stage 2 are to push your understanding, develop the hardest shit that you can possibly develop, like just for your own sake, you know, like just because that's fun to do. You just want to see how far you can take it and what crazy shit you can get away with. Learn how to organize your code, because you'll have to. Like it becomes obvious to you as you develop hard shit. Like it just becomes a necessity, and so you learn it as you go. And the challenges that you'll face in stage 2 is shit sprawling out of control and getting complex as fuck, and you getting stressed out and getting mad and getting scared and confused, and you'll get errors, and like you'll be worried that you broke the project, and like all of this sort of shit, and like all that's normal and part of the process. See, this is why I feel like it's important for me to tell you this, because this is the shit that I went through, and it's like, if I can at least make you aware of it, you know what to expect. And part of this as well, so another problem that you'll face is fucking running into dead ends with projects. And eventually what happens is you start at this level, right? And you're building up the project. And you're learning more as you go. And you get to such a point where your skills improve so much up here than what it was down here. But the foundations of your project are still down here. So suddenly you're at a situation where it's like, well, I basically need to rebuild the entire project if I want to continue, or I just start a new project and start with these new things that I've learned. And I think the right thing to do is to just start a new project. I think that's part of the project, part of the process, is eventually you get to a point with every project where you've outgrown the project because you just know so much now that you didn't know at the start, and the roots of the project are rooted in an old version of you that you're not anymore. And whenever you try to work on it, you'll feel the fucking disharmony. You'll feel the incongruence. You know what I mean? It's like you just open it up and you look at it and you're just like, oh my fucking god, like I've got to deal with this again, like fuck me, kill me now. And that's not a feeling to fight. And that's a very important lesson. That's probably the most important lesson I think I've learned in game development. It's just not to fight that feeling of, oh fuck this, like, and it's hard, right? Like, because you feel it and you're like, well, what does that mean? It's like, I'm fucking fed up with this and I need to move on, but it's like, I've got to let go of this thing that I spent like a year working on, you know, or like longer. And it's like, it's not easy. It's not easy, but at a certain point, it just becomes so fucking painful. It's like, well, do you take the pain of like starting a new project or the pain of holding on to the old? And eventually you just start the new one. And then life goes on, right? Life goes on. And then what you realize is that you completely forget about the old one and you're so happy doing the new one. So that's stage 2. And stage 3 then. Stage 3 is a little bit trickier for me to talk about because this is sort of a new one for me, but I think, yes, stage 2 takes a couple of years, you know? It's like, in stage 2, you're pushing the limits of your knowledge and developing as much complexity as you can just to see how much you can handle. And then as you learn to reduce that complexity, what you eventually get to is stage 3, which is where it doesn't... You've got the skills at this point, right? It's like, you've followed that path right through to the end, and it's like, you could go on learning more about the engine, but there's no point. Like, there's always more to learn, but at a certain point in your development, you realize that you've got enough, and it becomes a distraction to actually learn more technical knowledge about the engine, because that wasn't what you got into game development to begin with. It wasn't to be a technical fucking... If you get into it as an artist, because not everybody's an artist, you know, some people just want to be technical programmers and like whatever, but if you get into it as a creator, there comes a point where you've got enough knowledge, right? And seeking more knowledge is just a waste of your fucking time, and it's avoidance. It's avoidance of what you know you could actually be doing. And so what begins to happen is you start to ask questions like, well, what do I want to make? What's the absolute bare minimum that I could do to create that experience? And if you think like this in stage 1, it's a cop-out. Because it's like, if you're trying to do the bare minimum in stage 1, where you don't actually know anything, it's like, it's this pretense of like, oh, I'm minimal and like... You know, it's like, oh, I don't want to get too complicated. And it's like, you're trying to be an artist when really you have no right to be. And what needs to happen to earn the right is that you go all the way through stage 2, and then you come out the other side where it's almost like you prove to yourself that you know enough and that you've learned all the rules where you've earned the right to go beyond them, you know what I mean? And it's like, and the priorities shift, so just low-key having an existential crisis in the middle of the video. Just as a side note, like this pattern, right, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, it's not just in game development, it's in your whole life. And your relationship to game development is literally a reflection of your relationship to life. But we'll go into that another time. So stage 3. It becomes less about technical brilliance and technical achievement, and it becomes more about the essence of what makes game development magical, which is it's the experience. And what you start to naturally look for is clever ways that you can make like concise, I call them like cuts, like surgical like strikes, like here and there into a project to have the maximum leverage. So it's like you have an experience that you want to create. What are the key elements that create that sort of feeling in a player? And what are the things that you could do that imply the rest of the experience, right? So it's like things like inventory systems and crafting systems and like these massive fucking quests and like all these complex networks, like what they're all trying to do. Like they're all getting at something fundamental. It's like there's this feeling that you can get from a game that's actually independent of like how complex the game is in some ways. It's good to make games complex and brilliant and beautiful, which is why you go through stage 2, so that you have the capability to do that. But stage 3 is about not being a slave to that. And it's like the priority shifts from, I've said this a million times. Do I need to say it again? I'll say it one last time. The priority shifts from the technology being an end in and of itself and expecting the technology to bring you the good experience and expecting technical ability to actually improve the quality of a game, right? This is the realization, is that it doesn't. And then you enter into stage 3, which is where the experience becomes the priority and the technical understanding becomes the means in which you can achieve that end. That was a lot. I think that's almost everything I needed to say. But what that looks like now, so from a practical standpoint, so stage 1 was watching video tutorial series. Stage 2 is mostly putting those tutorial series aside, but going back to them when you need information. And stage 2 is about developing the most intense, ambitious, detailed, technically brilliant projects that you can possibly imagine, just to test your own ability, right? Like to see how far you can go. And then stage 3, what this looks like for you practically. It sounds fucking mad if you're in stage 1 and 2, I think. And it would have sounded mad to me, but it's like it's mostly daydreaming. It's mostly daydreaming. Because that's where the work's done. Like sitting at your computer isn't necessarily productive work anymore. Because what are you going to do? Like you're just going to create, you're literally going to rehash the old shit. It's like you've done it all, right? Like in stage 2, if you've pushed stage 2 to the limit, it's like at that point you've done it all. Like there's no point sitting at your computer to test your technical ability anymore and to make complicated projects because you've already done it. Like, and to do it more is to miss the point because you've transcended that stage. It's like you're out of that level now. And so what stage 3 looks like is it literally, you don't spend a lot of time actually at the computer. How you spend your time is daydreaming, thinking, taking notes, right? Like it's not as if you're not like working, even though your imagination is work, as far as I'm concerned. Because I mean, like, what are you going to create without imagination? Like, if you really think about that and like contemplate that, it's like, if you don't have the ability to imagine, like, what are you doing? Like, if you call yourself a creator, like, because not everyone's a creator, right? Like, some people just want to work and they want to program and like all of that. But like, if you're a creator and you don't have the ability to imagine, then you literally just you're a copycat. You can be a technically brilliant copycat, but you'll be a soulless copycat. Because what's soul? Soul is your imagination. It's your own personality. It's your own thoughts. It's your own, the images in your mind. It's you. It's you. And so for your games to be a reflection of you, you've got to be aware of what you are and who you are and what's going on inside you. So imagination is work. And so what you do is you spend time thinking, you spend time daydreaming, just letting your mind wander, and you jot down notes. And for me, like, just as a technical point, like, I draw pictures in fucking journals. Like, I've got a bookshelf over there, and like one of those shelves is literally just full of journals that I've filled with fucking my own thoughts and scribbles and drawings and like game ideas. And I put them in my phone as well. If you've got an iPhone, in the iPhone Notes app, like I have a whole folder in there full of like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of notes, and like folders just literally full of like 80 notes for a single project. And like notes can be like 10,000 words long, you know, and it's like, but that's part of the complexity thing. Like, that's part of stage 2 as well. Like, as you learn to daydream more, you rely less on things that you've thought about in the past and the records of them that you might have put down in your phone or on paper, and you rely more on your imagination in the present moment, because that's where the things are birthed from. They're not in the past. It's like everything that you've jotted down on a piece of paper or in your iPhone notes, it's like it's an echo of something that occurred in the present moment, which is the center of creativity. It happens now, right? Like it's in the present. And so your ability to be attuned to your thoughts and feelings and imagination and all of that in the present moment, that becomes your priority when it comes to game development. Like, that's the most important thing. It's cultivating that ability to see things in a unique way. It becomes philosophy, really. Like, you start to ask questions like, well, like you might be walking through a fucking supermarket and you look at the way that they've arranged the products to like sell more, and you think about the psychology of the people walking past, and you think about the experience that they're having, and you might see like a really beautiful shop, you know, and it's like, you think about the experience of what it's like to see the place and to walk in and see how they've arranged the lights and the plants, and they might have their prices displayed in a particular way, and like literally everything that you experience in your life, it parallels with game development, because game development is an experience, and everything that you experience is obviously a fucking experience. So game development, really, it's not about games, it's about experience design. And so that's the third stage of game development, is that you do less actual developing and more paying attention to the world outside of development, and thinking about the world and thinking about yourself and your own experiences and what it means to experience, and to experience something in a certain way, and how to invoke that experience. I think that's the core skill of a game developer and a game designer, is it's that ability and that talent and that developed excellence that you cultivate over years of how to make a person feel a particular way. That's the essence of game development. What can you do inside this medium that can invoke a feeling in a person? And that's game design. That's game development. And so your job as a game designer and a game developer, once you've passed through stage 2 and into stage 3, is to think about what is the essence of that feeling, and to, for me, like, make a conscious, deliberate effort to only do what's necessary to bring about that feeling. And part of bringing about that feeling might be a detailed inventory system or a detailed quest system or complex AI or like a really, really beautiful world, like a technically beautiful world, but it's not always. And the important part of stage 3 and the important change that happens in you as a game developer and a game designer is that flip from relying on the technology to make a game good and relying on technical skill to make something worthwhile, like an experience worthwhile, and you flip it and it becomes about the experience itself, and then everything that you've learned is in service to that. And that means letting go of a lot of what you've learned, because you don't actually need it, It's like you might know how to do it, and it's always there if you do need it, but you might literally find that like the games that you create, you actually only end up using the same things, like the same blueprint nodes and like the same stuff that you learnt way back in your first videos when you first got into game development, like simple fucking box triggers and like overlap events and like sound cues and point lights and like and you might find that that's enough, but that's the difference, right? It's like you didn't have the authority to do games like that in the beginning because you didn't know what you were doing, but now it's like you've been through the whole thing, and it's like when you do it from this new place, it hits different. It hits different. Because you've got all your experience and all of that, but like also, it's also B, because you've got the technical understanding, and it's like, yes, you might be using mostly box triggers and mostly point lights and like really simple shit, but every now and again there might be a technical bit of knowledge that took you years to understand, that you can just sprinkle in here and there. And so that's the process, right? It's like you go through this whole thing, just have all these tools at your disposal, and then you learn how to just sprinkle and make surgical little cuts like here and there, and that's the evolution of you as a game developer. Well, that's the evolution of a game developer and a game designer up to the point where I'm at. Because I can only talk about what I've experienced, right? I mean, I can only talk with sincerity about the things that I've experienced. Otherwise, I'm just wasting everybody's fucking time, including my own. Which is what a lot of people do on YouTube, let's be real. Not true, actually. Not true. I don't want to bash people too hard. Because really, in bashing them, I'm bashing myself. Because I've been there, bro. I've been there. Anyway, I'm going on a fucking tangent. So, watch tutorials, be a sponge, absorb as much as you can. As I was just thinking about this, it just reminded me of something the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said, that the evolution of a man is, first you're a camel, you're a beast of burden, you load yourself up with as much as you possibly can, right? Like that's just what you do when you're young, because you don't know what there is, you don't know what the world is, you need to experience, and the way you experience is to just absorb as much as you fucking can. Stage 1, you're a camel, a beast of burden. Stage 2, you're a lion, motherfucker. You're a sword-wielding lion. And stage 2, you're a warrior, right? It's like, fuck it, I'm done listening to other people. I'm done taking on other people's shit. I'm gonna fucking do some crazy shit. Like, I'm gonna push myself, bro. I'm gonna push myself until I die. Like, that's the healthy mentality for stage 2. It's like, be ambitious as you can until you fucking burn yourself into the ground, right? And then when you finally burn yourself into the ground, then start stage 3, which Nietzsche describes as being a baby. You're a baby again. And that's what happens. It's like this lion, or this crazy, like, bloodthirsty, sword-wielding thing that's like setting itself on fire, just burns itself into the ground. And then from those ashes, you're reborn as a child. And what that means is that your eyes are open, like wide with wonder. Like if you've ever looked at a kid, they're like, you know what I mean? It's like they're looking around, and it's like anything's possible, right? Like, the world's a mysterious place. So, stage 1, watch tutorials, absorb information, be a sponge. Stage 2, do the craziest shit you possibly can, push your own limits as far as they will possibly go in a technical sense, and just personally push yourself as hard as you can possibly go. And then stage 3 sort of happens on its own once you realize the limits of stage 2. Like, you'll start to get it, right? And at that point, you won't need me to tell you what to do, because you'll know. You'll know. I hope that was helpful. Drop a like and all that. It does help, you know. It does help. It does help the channel. Algorithms don't do it alone, you know. Like, this sort of shit being seen, if this is something that you want other people to see, it requires your action to help other people see it, because I can't do it by myself, right? I can't do it. So subscribe, hit the bell, send it to someone if you want, if that feels right to do. Post it on your own channel or fucking social media or whatever, you know, if you want. You don't have to. You don't have to. But, like, I'll keep making videos regardless. So, alright, you have a good day. See you in the next one.